All right, welcome to another session with Mr. Luna. Today we're going to be looking at solving inequalities with addition and subtraction. Now, when we're talking about inequalities, it's the same process as solving for an equation. The inequalities are going to have more than one answer, more than one solution. So we're going to be looking at for all possible solutions. So let's get into this. First example, it says Kayako has completed 26 hours of community service. Her goal is to complete at least 90 hours this semester. Write and solve an inequality to show how many more hours, using the variable h, Keiko can complete to meet her goal. Use the number line to graph the solution. So typically when we solve an inequality, we're going to have to draw a graph to represent all of those possible solutions. So before we get into it, we have this half-completed inequality, h plus unknown with another unknown and at 90. So we know that we have 26 hours that she has already completed. So that's how much she has already completed. But her goal is to complete at least 90 hours. So she can complete 90 hours at the bare minimum, or she can complete more. So at least means it's equal to or more. And we're using the variable h to represent how many more hours she needs. So if h represents how many hours she needs, I'm adding that to the amount that she already has completed, which was 26 hours. And if it says at least 90 hours, then h plus 96 has to equal to 90 or be more than 90. So I'm going to use the greater than or equal to sign. All right, so again, this is the greater than or equal to sign, because she can at least meet the 90-hour minimum, which is the equal to, or she can complete more hours than 90. So the equal to, the more than or equal to sign is going to work for this one. So now we have our inequality. We're going to change our inequality to an equation. So to do that, I'm just going to take my inequality sign and I'm just going to change it to an equal sign. So now I have h plus 26 equals 90. Now that I have my equation, I'm just doing a one-step equation to find my missing amount. When I'm solving for your equation, whatever I do to one side, I have to do the other using our inverse operations because I'm trying to get the h by itself. So I'm going to subtract 26 from this side. That's going to cancel that out and make that 0. But I also need to subtract 26 over here. So now all that I have left with is h equals 90 subtract 26 is going to give me, I need to borrow, change that to an 8, that's a 1, 64 hours. So Kyoko needs to at least work 64 more hours to reach her goal. Now what I'm going to do to write a graph for this, to draw a graph, I'm just going to use my number line. Here's 0. Here's 64. 64 represents my solution, and I'm going to put a marker on 64. So when we're looking at inequalities, there's two different ways you can have. You can have an open circle, shown here, or a closed circle. An easy way to remember is that if there's an equal sign, a greater than or equal sign right here, that's telling you that it's included. So it's going to be a closed circle. So that means our solution set is going to include whatever our variable is. So now that we know that she can work at least 64 hours or more, I'm going to draw it to the right. So that is the first way to solve an inequality. we're going to dive down a little bit more into it. So let's look at the second one. Okay, example 2. We're still going to be writing inequality and then solving inequality by finding all possible solutions. The weather forecast predicted that the evening temperature could get as low as negative 12.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Between afternoon and evening, the temperature dropped by 7.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And the forecast was still correct. What could the afternoon temperature T have been? Okay, so again, I need to write my inequality. So if I need to identify what information is important, we know that it's going to get as low as negative 12.5 degrees. We know that's going to get as low as negative 12.5 degrees in the evening. But between the afternoon and the evening, it dropped 7.5 degrees. So we don't know what the temperature was in the afternoon. All we know is that it dropped. So I think I have enough information to write my inequality now. I'm going to use the variable t to represent the temperature in the afternoon because we don't know what that is. So t, we know that it dropped by 7.5 degrees. And we also know that the evening temperature was negative 12.5 degrees. But the question is my temperature going to be colder than negative 12.5 degrees or warmer? It said it could get as low as 12.5 degrees. So that's going to be t subtract 7.5. It's going to be actually greater than or equal to negative 12.5. Because when we're talking about temperature, if this is the lowest that it can get, if this is the lowest temperature, then that means my negative numbers have to be greater than negative 12.5. And again, that means the closer you get to 0, the greater it is. So our values are not going to drop below 12.5 degrees. I have enough information now to solve for all possible solutions. So I'm going to change my inequality sign into an equal sign because I need to change my inequality to an equation. I'm just going to rewrite it. So t subtract 7.5 equals negative 12.5. Now I'm just solving an equation. I need to use my inverse operations to solve for the variable. So since I'm subtracting 7.5 on this side, I need to add 7.5, and that's going to make that 0. But I need to add 7.5 on this side. Now I have a negative plus a positive. Our subtraction rules, going all the way back to topic 1, if I am adding or two opposite signs, the one with the greatest amount of magnitude, the farther from 0, is going to determine the sign. Since this has a larger number, that means my solution to negative 12.5 is going to be negative. So negative 12.5 plus 7.5, that's going to give me 5.0, or just 5. So now all I have left with is t equals negative 5 degrees. But the question is if it's going to be less than, it's more than or equal to. So I just need to change my equal sign back to the original inequality sign. So it's t can be greater than or equal to negative 5 degrees. And there's a way that we can check this. So if these are telling me these are the same thing, I'm going to draw my number line. Because if you're unsure, this is an easy way to do it. Here's 0, and here's -5. It's going to be a closed circle because it's equal to. But the question is it going to go left or is it going to go right? An easy way to test is to pick a point for t. So let's say t equals 0. Because here's 0 right here. We're going to test this point in my equation. So all I have to do is take my equation, t subtract 7.5 equals -12.5, substitute my t for 0, and so now it's 0, subtract 7.5. 0 subtract 7.5 is just -7.5. If the statement is true, then we know it goes that direction, but if it's false, it goes the opposite direction. So -7.5 does not equal -12.5. So 0 cannot be a solution. I'm sorry. Let's backtrack. Just backtrack all this. We are using not the equation, we're using the inequality. So it's greater than or equal to. Now if I was to complete my equation of 0 subtract 7.5 is greater than or equal to -12.5. If this is true, then we know 0 is a solution. So -7.5 is greater than or equal to -12.5. So 0 is a solution. So we end up going this direction. All right, so that's an easy way to check to see if there's another point. Once you figure out what your variable was, you can use that inequality to test any point and substitute it in to see if it makes it true or not. We have one more to look at. So now we are just going to be solving an inequality using what we just went over. All right. So example 3, solve the inequality x subtract 1/2 is less than -2/3. All right. So this is just a less than sign, so it's not going to be a closed circle. It's going to be open. It's going to be an open circle on our number line. So let's solve this. First things first, we need to change my inequality to an equation. So just make my inequality sign an equal sign. Rewrite my inequality. X subtract 1/2 equals -2/3. We notice that our fractions are they do not have the same denominator, so I need to make them the same denominator. So to do that, halves and thirds have a common factor, a common multiple of 6. So I'm going to have to multiply my 1/2 by 2 and my -2/3 by 3. Sorry, my 1/2 by 3 and my -2/3 by 2. So now it's going to become x subtract -1/2 multiplied by 3 is going to give me 3/6 equals -2/3 multiplied by 2 is -4/6. Now they have the same denominator. Now I can add and subtract them. Now I'm just solving an equation, inverse operations, add 3/6 to this side to cancel it out, because I need to get the x by itself. Add 3/6 to this side. So now all that I have left with is x equals -4. There's more negatives than positives, so all I have left with is -1/6. So my inequality states x is less than -1/6. But to check that, we need to use our number line. So here's my 0. Here's my -1/6. Because again, our number line represents what we solved for our variable. We already declared that it's going to be an open circle. So here's my open circle on -1/6. But the question is, am I going to be going to the left or am I going to be going to the right? To do that, we need to pick a point on our number line and to double check. So I like to use 0 because adding with 0 is easy. So let's take our original inequality of x subtract 1/2 is less than -2/3. But we know we change this to x subtract 3/6 because these are equivalent because we were looking for a common denominator, -4/6. I'm going to substitute my 0. I'm using x equals 0 in this scenario. So I'm going to substitute my 0 in. So it's 0 subtract -3/6 is less than -4/6. 0 subtract -3/6 is just -3/6. So is -3/6 less than -4/6? The answer is no. -3/6 is actually greater. So if 0 is not a solution, then we must go the opposite direction. And that's true because down here, if x is less than -1/6, that means x has to be more negative than -1/6. So x can be -2/6, -3/6, anything that is more negative than 1/6. So there's 3 examples. You can always replay these if you need to. So this was for lesson 5.4 of just adding and subtracting inequalities. Again, inequalities are going to have more than one solution, which is indicated right here. Because it's all possible solutions. X can be anything less than -1/6 in this case.